Hi there, welcome along to episode 181 of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers show made by fans for fans, where all of our content is absolutely free. And guys, in a week like this, you're going to want as much Rangers content as you can get your hands on. So please do head over to our website at www.gersnet.co.uk, where there's a whole load of great stuff in addition to the podcast, such as the friendly discussion forum, plenty of articles, Frankie's social media page, and even a history archive over there. So please do head over to the website and check that out. It's just gone 9:30 p.m. on Sunday, the 8th of May. Thank you very, very much if you're joining us live tonight on the YouTube stream. Please do let us know your thoughts, your questions, your comments. How are you feeling after Thursday? How are you feeling after the game today? How are you feeling looking ahead to the two cup finals that we have coming up in the next couple of weeks? Frankie's going to be patrolling the comments there, so please do let him know how you're getting on this evening. If you're not joining us live, the podcast is always available for download first thing on a Monday morning. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts from normally, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, and Spotify. Like I say, there's plenty to talk about tonight. We're going to be looking at today's 2-0 victory, fairly routine victory, I guess, at Ibrox over Dundee United. We'll also take a look at how we're settling down after Thursday, after one of the most momentous nights in Rangers history. Look ahead to the final in Seville. And take a look at some of the other pieces of news that have come out throughout the week. Before we get started on all of that stuff, though, it'd be really remiss of me not to mention the Rangers women's team, who have wrapped up the Scottish Women's Premiership title this afternoon. Firstly, it's a real shame that their game kind of clashed with the men's game. I managed to catch the last 45 minutes, the second half of the women's game today. They just needed a point against Glasgow City to wrap that up, and I'm really, really pleased to say they managed to do so. Not only is it an amazing achievement to win that title and win the league, or win any league, but to end a 14-year dominance of Glasgow City is really something special. So congratulations to Malcolm Thompson, to the team, and everyone at Rangers Women's. It's really, really great stuff to see. We'll turn our attention to the men, and two fine men that I have joining me this evening. Firstly, Iain Duff. Iain, warm welcome back to the show. Have you managed to calm down after Thursday night? You're not calmed down enough to remember to unmute.
There we go. Technology. Yeah, no, it's been quite a few days, hasn't it? It's still sinking in, as they say, but yeah, unbelievable in some ways.
It really was. It really was. Are you still sort of a couple of drinks in? Is that maybe why you're forgetting the button there?
Could well be. I'm on the Coca-Cola tonight, that's that.
There you go. Good man. Also joining us tonight, Patrick Cascade. Patrick, would it be wrong of me to assume that you've already done some incredibly in-depth scouting of the Frankfurt squad?
No, not as yet. The hangover, less actually real, more of positive energy is still firmly here. I was almost not unexcited to watch today's game, but it went as well as it could have. I think we're all sort of preoccupied with 10, and I think it's 13 days from now, in which will be the real make or break of the season. But this is what we support football for.
Absolutely, it is. Too right. Well, look, I kind of agree with the sentiment there that today's game had a slightly strange feeling about it when we're really clearly looking ahead to what's going to come week after next. But Iain, following Thursday, and given that really the league is done, I think Celtic need 1 point to confirm that. It did put a slightly strange feeling or a strange atmosphere over today's game. I guess it's a silly question, given that we are Rangers, we expect to win every game, but did a good performance and a good result really matter today, given the context of everything else that's been going on?
Well, I suppose in a sort of literal way, no, it didn't, because, as you say, the league is over, basically. It's all over by the shouting. But yeah, I mean, I think a good performance and a result just keeps it going, doesn't it? So what we don't want is to sort of, for the next 2 weeks, to drop off completely, and then going into the two finals, unprepared, basically, less sharp than they would like to be. So I think, yeah, while it's a chance to give the sort of fringe players and the younger players a run out, I think we still want to keep the momentum going, because you don't want to lose that, and especially with two really important games coming up. So yes, I was pleased at the performance today. I thought the team was pretty good all round. I think everyone did what they had to do. Dundee United really didn't offer much, to be fair. So I have to say we were tested in any way. But yeah, I thought that everyone did exactly what was asked of them.
Patrick, clearly a huge amount of rotation from Gio in the squad today, and he clearly has one eye, or one and a half eyes on what's to come week after next. What did you make of the performance, given the number, I guess, of fringe players that made the squad today?
I think it was probably went as well as you could have hoped. I think the first half was fine. The football on show was really good, actually, despite what the scoreline would suggest. And I think we probably got the synthesis of a good result and a good performance. And that was sort of the cherry on top, was seeing the trio of academy-produced players, or academy players, because Charlie McCann, you can dispute who actually produced them, but them coming on, really not looking out of their depth. I think Alex Iwobi looked fantastic when he came on, really bright spark, and I think it would be remiss not to mention Leon King from the start, and he was given man of the match by Rangers TV, and he looked incredibly comfortable, so much so when he was put at left back, he was swinging crosses, looking just really adept on the ball, in which it's like, this is incredible for like an 18-year-old centre-back, and he's being able to sort of maintain this technical proficiency up in the final third. But no injuries. People who needed minutes in their legs got them. I think that was really important for Ramsey. He didn't last the full 90, but that I'm surprised he even lasted 75 to 80, because it's an interesting discussion as to whether do you rest players and give them sort of the full ability to recuperate, but then some players sort of do better by continuing momentum and having minutes in their legs. And I think it was almost weird to see Tavernier subbed off. I think that's probably the first time we've seen it in 2 or 3 years where he actually came off uninjury related. But I would just say it was a positive experience all round in every sort of facet.
I think you're right, and with the trio of youngsters that came on midway through the second half, added to Leon King starting the game. That's 4 out of the 11 on the pitch at the end there have come through the academy. It felt to me that there was an air of almost like a pre-season match about this. Like, the sun was shining, plenty of families there. We went 54 minutes without scoring a goal, and I didn't hear any booing or any kind of fans getting on the backs. And we had loads of youngsters out who are having a great day at Ibrox. So it did have this kind of weird carnival pre-season lack of tension feeling to it, but actually, given the stress and the tension that we've had in the last few days, that's certainly no bad thing. Iain, we've mentioned there Alex Lowry, McCann, Devine, and King, who all came on or maybe even started the game. Which of those youngsters impressed you the most?
Well, I think Lowry stands out. He's looks like an excellent prospect. He always impresses. He's impressed every time I've seen him playing. He's just got a confidence about him. He's willing to try things. He's only 18 and he's got no right to really be trying some of the stuff that he does. But he just seems to use his confidence. He'll take the ball on. He'll try a wee trick. He'll look for a pass, and he's willing to have a go as well. So he's the kind of player actually we've been crying out for, and if he fulfills his potential, then we're in for a real treat. So he stood out today, even in the short time that he was on, and King as well. The thing about King is, I wondered, because I haven't seen an awful lot of him playing. Certainly not in the until he gets occasional chances in the first team, and I assumed that he maybe wasn't quite up to the standard that was required, because he wasn't getting his chance at all, and we were struggling at times throughout the season for centre back because of various things, injuries, etc. And he just didn't seem to ever be trusted, and that concerned me a bit. And having seen him playing, I'm really surprised that he hasn't had more of a run out during the season, because he looked so comfortable, he looked really assured. As I said, Dundee United didn't really offer much, to be honest, in an attacking sense, but what was asked of him, he did it superbly, and he looked really comfortable in that position. So I'm kind of surprised he's not been seen more often during the season, but he also looks like someone who could get himself into the first team reckoning over the next couple of seasons.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying there, Iain, about Leon King. I'm fairly certain he was starting to break through at the tail end of last season. Obviously, last season was a slight anomaly in how early it was wrapped up. And I've got a photo just there of the squad when we confirmed the title last season. I'm fairly sure he's in that picture. So he was hanging around the first team back then. He was getting minutes 12 months ago. So surprised we've not seen more of him, as you say, with the defensive frailties we've had with injuries, Hollander being out for so long, etc. Patrick, we've rattled off a few very high caliber youngsters there. And I agree with what Iain said about Alex Lowry. Every time I've seen him play, he looks phenomenal. He looks really, really gifted at the late runs into the box. His range of passing is excellent. There was one wonderful through ball for Fashion today after he came on, which really caught my eye. And yet, on this podcast, if you delve back through our archives, you go back a couple of years, you'll hear me say that Ross McCrory is the greatest output from the academy since Barry Ferguson. And if you go back one more year, you'll hear me say the same thing about Glenn Middleton. So what do we need to do to make sure that these boys actually have an impact in the first team for a number of years and not just be a bit of a flash in the pan?
Hey, I was also a big Ross McCrory fan. I mean, he won, I think, this is obviously an Aberdeen podcast, but I think he won their player of the season. So it's good to see at least players that we produce. Obviously, not all of them are going to have a career at Ibrox and at Rangers, but going on to do some decent things. And assuming we have a sell-on clause for him, so if they make any money, some should come to us. I think the best compliment I can pay to Alex Lowry is that everything he does, between his appearance, the way he runs, the way he handles the ball, is so un-Scottish, and that's firmly a compliment to him. It's a sort of thing in which it isn't this sort of dogged workman-like. It just comes really naturally. And I wonder if that's a sign of things to come with modern generations of Scottish footballers, which is hopeful. But it really is this sort of technical ability, which is like just fun. It's flair-filled. But I think the pathway, I mean, there's been a concerted effort, especially since Ross Wilson came in, to sort of establish a more dogged pathway or a structured pathway in which players stay in-house and develop, as opposed to always going out on loan to a League One or League Two Scottish team, because you need to consider the cost or risk-reward benefit and ratios and all of that. And we see Man City do it really well, and it's really easy to say, oh, just get them training in the first team and they'll be better than playing in League One on the weekends. But I think it has worked out, especially when you look at Lowry, King, McCann now, and even going back Patterson. I do think the loans to English League One and Championship have also been working well, because I just think the structure there is slightly better than what we have in Scotland. And they play far more games. They're racking up 46 games a season. So even if you're not going down there as a guaranteed starter by the law of averages, you're going to get at least 20 games and minutes under your legs. Stephen Kelly's done quite well at Salford, albeit not lit it up. But even he's coming in January and still got, I think, 23 appearances, which is close to what you get in a full year here in Scotland. But no, I think utilising our facilities, they're the best in the country and they're really top quality. I think on the Rangers TV broadcast today, Neil McCann was saying it's up there with any in Europe. You come here and it is comparable to the super clubs. So I think sort of grinding everything we can out of it, nurturing a positive atmosphere, but fundamentally getting them in playing first team minutes as young as possible. I kind of concur with what Iain was saying. It's quite surprising it's taken King this long to get. I think that was his first full 90 in the league. But it's easy for us to now say, because he played well, he should have come in earlier. But it is nice to know this now, as opposed to throw him in February and maybe he has a negative experience and is confident gets pushed back and his timeline is thrown back by 6 months. But it is positive, and I think this is, I know it's quite easy to say in the moment, but appears to be the most encouraging or exciting generation or year of youth talents we've had in quite a while.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think maybe this is me being a bit idealistic and a bit of a dreamer, but I feel that the management team that we have in place now as well, with Gio, but also with Dave Voss, whose background is in kind of academy coaching and bringing young talent through at a very successful level in Holland, should help us to kind of bridge that gap, because we've said a lot that the output from the Rangers Training Centre over the past decade, 15 years, has not really been good enough. So let's hope that changes. There have been plenty of players actually that have come through the Rangers youth ranks and kind of gone on to have impressive careers elsewhere. I was watching a championship game yesterday, English championship game yesterday, Luton versus Reading. I saw Cal Naismith dominating in the centre of the park for Luton. I remember him playing for us in the third tier. I was watching him against Queen's Park. He was appalling, right? But he's obviously gone on. John Fleck, another one, gone on to have a really, really solid career after sort of getting that grounding at Rangers. Iain, let's talk about someone who had a massive impact on today's game, has had a good impact throughout the season, and yet there's still question marks hanging over him. Fashion Sakala, he wins us the penalty, and he gets the assist for the second goal. Full of running, full of creativity. It seems to me sometimes that he doesn't even know what he's going to do, which is probably a nightmare for defenders, because if he doesn't know what he's going to do, then how can I, the defender, know what he's going to do? Well, how do you see his development going in the role that he's going to play? Because there are certainly still fans saying that this guy's not good enough to play for Rangers, and yet he's really been the catalyst to us scoring 2 goals today.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. I think he's, I like his enthusiasm. I like his effort. He's one of these players who, and it's not always necessarily the sign of a great player, but if you put the effort in and you look as if you want to contribute to the team, then that is half the battle. I think what lets him down a bit is possibly his final decision making. He quite often he'll go for the wrong option when he's through and goal, or he's been a bit unlucky as well. There was a chance he had today where he was blocked just as he was hitting the shot, and that was just good defending. It wasn't anything to do with him. So he's been a bit unlucky in that sense, but he's scored some important goals, and as you say, he's been involved in creating goals as well. I think he's a decent squad player. He wouldn't necessarily be my first choice to start every game, but I mean, he deserves his chance if Morelos isn't available, if Roof isn't available, or if we want to play a different approach than what Roof offers. Then I think he's worthy of being in the squad, and he's definitely worthy of starting when required. So yeah, I don't know where he'll go. I mean, how his career will develop. He certainly has got plenty of sort of raw talent, and I think that will go a long way. And if he can sort of hone that, perhaps with somebody like Roy Mackay helping him out, maybe that could help him as well in the sort of medium to longer term. But yeah, I think sometimes it's just that decision making from his point of view that is what lets him down. But he plays the game with a smile on his face, saying, I know that's a bit of a cliche, but I mean it's good to see. He seems to enjoy himself. So. More power to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick, how about yourself? I mean, Rangers fans on the whole seem to love the idea of us shopping in these kind of markets where we got fashion from. Do you think that he's actually a good enough player to lead us potentially into the Champions League group stages next year, all being well next week?
I mean, not in like a talismanic starting sort of capacity, but I think it'd be impossible to say he isn't worthy of a place on the bench or in the sort of 15-man rotation. But no, I think there's obvious sort of complaints about how sort of straightforward his football appears to be. It's not very flashy, it's not very flair, but it's effective. You can't argue with the numbers. They're genuinely really impressive, and they supplement when Morelos isn't playing, or when he is, and he supplements them really well, at least in numerical capacity. But he also does provide that sort of pitch stretching effect, in which that the amount of chaos he does provide just with his pace and his sort of underappreciated strength. He has really good upper body strength and a fantastic leap, which is something I didn't really expect from him. But you see him sort of challenging these big centre backs in the air. It's a shame he can't really head with the ball, though, but he does manage to get contact, which is better than nothing. I do think he's the sort of player in which not all players are brought in immediately to be a star in their first season. He's only really had 2 years of full-on top division French football because he was playing for Spartak Moscow's second team in the FNL, the Russian second division, 3 seasons ago. So he's only really now starting to play consistent football. In his first year at Ostend, he only played half a season. He was playing in the right, left, and centre, which kind of mirrors this year. He hasn't really found a sort of specific position. I think he's best on the left. That's where he's played least, sadly. I think on the right, he's just not good enough with his left foot at all. He's not really comfortable or has enough finesse within that right foot to open up both sides of the foot and play with inside and outside the foot. And that's really obvious to see when he plays with Tavernier. He's not really able to sort of interchange as well as like Aribo or even Arfield is with him. But no, I think he'll just improve, to be honest, in the next season. That's obviously my optimistic hat. But he did come in, I remember a lot was made of it. He came in quite late in the summer. There was questions about where he was, and I think that was visa related and COVID restriction related. So he joined not even at the beginning of preseason. So I do expect that full preseason under him will help. He's obviously settled to Scotland. He knows his teammates. He seems to be a popular character within both the sport and the dressing room. And I do think, as much as it might appear gimmicky, having someone like Roy Mackay, who is one of the most revered strikers of the 2000s, is not going to not help, if you know what I mean. He's a sort of player in which he's all about finishing and getting into good positions, and that is what we would ideally like to see Sakala improve the most.
Absolutely. Staying with yourself, Patrick, a player who I thought did extremely well today, but one who was signed to make an immediate impact is Amad Diallo. Obviously brought in for a 6-month loan spell in January there. 45 minutes today, scored a lovely goal, but certainly looked full of tricks and full of creativity and full of drive. Is there an argument to suggest that he's maybe been underused in the last couple of months?
I'm not sure if underused. Cause I think the idea is definitely there that he was brought in to be an immediate impact, because that's what you do with a 6-month loan. There's no other purpose to it for them to come in and hit the ground running. But he really isn't the profile of player that you'd want on a purely 6-month loan. This was his first foray into consistent first-team football. He's obviously talented. He showed that Atalanta's B team. It's a reason Man United forked out whatever they did for him. And there's also another reason why he did play in some capacity in United's Europa League run 2 seasons ago, or last season, I forget. But no, I think he's the sort of player in which definitely it would have been perfect if we had him on an 18-month loan. I put it that way. This 6 months, like how the Sands deal has kind of come up, this 6 months is a bedding in period, especially because I'm unsure of his English levels, because he only moved to the UK 18 months ago, and before that I don't think he spoke English. He's young, he's quite slight, and he's genuinely a boy. So I think taking this time for him to settle has helped. And some people might say there's less pressure in this game, but I do think it's coming to terms with where he's living, who he's with, and stuff like that. So I do think the idea of him coming in and being an immediate one is not, I think failure is quite hard to put it, because he's such a likable chap and he hasn't really had that much opportunity. I think the Motherwell game was probably a microcosm of his time. He looked quite decent, quite tricky on the ball, but then was forced off because of Balogun's red card. I do see some chats with the idea of bringing him or wanting to bring him back for 12 more months. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think, again, like Sakala, he'd benefit from a preseason, maybe some also physical benchmarking, ideas of getting his weight up along those lines. But I don't think he's been fantastic, but I do think there's been flashes to show that there is a real player there, and one which is at the caliber of, in the future, to play beyond whatever we can offer at Rangers and maybe get a spot in that Man United team. I mean, even now he could probably go into that United team. They're not faring very well at all.
Yeah, yesterday was humiliating for United. Iain, Rangers have only a couple of league games left of this campaign, which ultimately domestically goes down as an unsuccessful league season. But Ross County at home on Wednesday is the next tie. How do we approach this one? Do we see a starting lineup similar to what we saw today, with lots of fringe, lots of rotation, or is it time to start building momentum into the legs ahead of Frankfurt next Wednesday?
Well, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you don't want players to get rusty, so you want to keep them ticking over, but equally you don't want them to get tired, you don't want them to get injured, all sorts of things can happen in games, and at this stage you don't want anyone to get an injury that's going to put them out of the finals. So I think it'll be something similar, a kind of mixture of players who are automatic starts and some of the fringe guys, and give them a chance. Because the other thing as well is, if something does happen, and we want these fringe players to come in as fresh and as ready as the sort of regular starters. So I think guys like Sands, who I thought actually put a good game today. I thought he played pretty well. I think he'll probably start again during the week. I think we'll probably see a similar kind of lineup to what we saw today. And I think that'll be the case again at the weekend, and then hopefully we'll be all ready to go.
I think you're probably right, and I don't think many people are going to be too disappointed with that. Like you say, most of these French players today acquitted themselves very nicely. I'm glad you mentioned James Sands there. I think he did well. 18-month loan deal on that one, I think, with an option to buy at the end. A sensible deal for all parties, and I look forward to him kind of hopefully establishing himself a little bit more next season. Another one who can be useful covering a number of positions. So lots of stuff to be optimistic for. Gents, I appreciate we've only done sort of 20-25 minutes on the Dundee United game, but in truth, not a huge amount actually to talk about from that game. Relatively routine, and we want to get onto the more fun stuff, which is, of course, kind of reflecting now on Thursday's just monumental victory over RB Leipzig. I was saying to Frankie just before we came on air here, undoubtedly my greatest, kind of most enjoyable experience ever being at a football game. It's been a few days, Patrick. Has the I guess the weight of this achievement started to sink in yet? You look at the teams that were in this competition 2 months ago, and you see that we're through to the final. Us, a team from Scotland, has that started to really make sense to you yet?
No, I mean, I'm still at the point where when I'm at the gym and I'm on the treadmill, they have a touch screen and I can watch YouTube highlights. And for 3 days in a row, all I've done is watch the game's highlights twice to make up my 20-minute cardio session. But no, I think this is, albeit is going to be a polarizing topic in Scotland. I think it's one that we should be able to proudly talk about for as long as we want, maybe even name a hospitality suite after if we so choose. But that'll be really fun if we manage to do something in Seville. But I think it's, if you just look back to August or September when the competition started and you look at the bookmakers and the predictive odds of giving us, I think it was 0.5% chance of making it to the finals and even less to win it. And then when you come and you manage to navigate all these ties, and then you finally get there in a circumstance in which the game was so it was nervy. That's the main overriding emotion, but it wasn't that difficult. I felt that we were genuinely the better football team, and that's coming up against the sort of end line in one of the most streamlined and effective production machines in football, which is the Red Bull Group. And this is a team which is littered with top quality talent, which is linked with these super clubs. I mean, Joško Gvardiol, he played really well against us, and he's linked with Chelsea and Barcelona. So this is an example of who we're playing against. This is Champions League caliber opponents who were given the group of death and managed to get some points out of it as well. I think it doesn't matter who we played, to be honest, and how we got there. This is still the greatest achievement, at least of my lifetime. And I'm sure many other Rangers fans will concur with that agreement. And I do think regardless of what happens 10 days from now, it will obviously look back fondly and will be something that we can use to try and sell to prospective players and hopefully use as a bargaining chip to try and keep some players and extend our deals. But if we do manage to go one step farther, which I'm fully confident in doing, because I think my line quarterfinal onwards was we're here, so we might as well win it. Because there is, especially, it's just 90 minutes. Frankfurt aren't a great side. They're tangibly worse than Leipzig and Dortmund. And they were in a similar predicament this weekend to us. They played quite a rotated squad, but they still did tie with Gladbach at home. And it's at the point where it's like, on merit, we deserve to be here. And this is a team who are firmly within our stratosphere, and we should take them on. Maybe we struggled against Braga away, again, a team who were similar to us, let's hope. And we managed to play up to Dortmund at Leipzig. But I do think the sort of gravitas of the achievement and the sort of incident itself, the finals, will firmly help these players because they're used to playing in high pressure matches. They've played in countless old firms, which are perhaps one of the best litmus tests to playing in a big European final. So I have no doubt that they'll go and do us proud. And if they put in a sort of performance that merits respect, that'll be top. And if that is crowned with a trophy, even better.
I think you laid it out really well there, because on paper, this is the first time for a number of rounds now that we really have a very, very good chance of winning this. Having put out two teams from the same league as Frankfurt. I mean, Frankfurt today drew 1 each at home against Borussia Mönchengladbach. They're down into 12th in the Bundesliga. We've already put out Dortmund, who are second. We've already put out RB Leipzig, who are fourth. It's one of those where you go on paper, there's no reason why we can't do this. The odds from the bookies are very, very tight. I think last I looked, we were sort of 13-10, so not quite favourites, but really, really not very far off. So it's very interesting. Iain, Patrick described it there as the greatest achievement by Rangers in his lifetime. Patrick and I suspect, are within sort of 5 to 10 years in age, and I would say it's the greatest achievement in my lifetime as well. I wasn't around for 1972. I was around for 2008, and that's the benchmark, I think, that I have for Rangers achievements. How does 2022 compare to 2008?
Well, first of all, I was 3 months old in 1972 when we won it. So I suppose within my lifetime, then that's the greatest achievement. But in what I can actually remember, 2008. I mean, what I would say about 2008 is I do think that I think that doesn't get the credit it deserves. And I think the way the game sort of panned out, the final panned out, it was a bit disappointing. I don't think I think a lot of fans sort of think we didn't really go for it. We didn't take the chance. It was a one-off game, and we approached it in the same way as we'd approached every other game in that run to the final, and played it very cautiously. that was a missed opportunity. And I think because of that, a lot of people sort of downplay 2008. I think it was a massive achievement to get there, and it was the final itself. Yeah, the result was disappointing. At 1-0, we had a chance to equalise, and if that goal had gone in, and we'd gone on to win it, then there would have been another Walter Smith masterclass. So I think he was entitled to approach the game the way he'd approached every other game in that run. And I know it didn't quite work out the way we had hoped, but that was just the way it was. Zenit were probably a better team and deserved to win. That said, this supersedes that by miles, in my opinion. The run to the final, 2008, the run to the final was good, and we played some decent teams. But I think this time, in the context of what the Europa League is now, is the fact that it's now the Europa League, and I think since it's been the Europa League, it has become a sort of mini Champions League in some ways. So if you look back at the last 10 years or so, the winners have basically come from England and Spain. That's the levels we've been at. I think in 2010 was the last time a team from outside Spain or England won it, and that was Porto, I think. Porto in 2010 or 2011. So, the competition's been dominated by the big guns, and the finalists have all come from the big countries. Basically, I think maybe there was a Ukrainian team made it in one season. But apart from that, since it's been the Europa League, it has been mini Champions League, and that's the standard. And a lot of the teams who have reached the final have dropped down from the Champions League as well. So in that context, for Rangers to get to the final, and in fact, for Frankfurt to get to the final as well, I mean, fair play to them. I mean, they've also in some ways overachieved. I think for Rangers to get to the final, surpasses anything that we've done up until this point in the European context since we actually won the competition in '72, and I hope that we give it a go. I hope we win, obviously. I think we can win, although I'm maybe not quite as confident as some other people seem to be. But that's probably just me. I hope that after this we'll reflect back on this run as what it was, which is a massive achievement. And if Rangers do win it, and I still think it's a big if, but if we do win it, I would say that is the biggest achievement of any Scottish club in Europe ever. I mean, I know the European Cup was the bigger trophy, but when you look at the context that we're in now and how far behind we are in terms of the amount of money we've got and the competition we have on a week-to-week basis, we shouldn't be there. The competition is not designed for us to be there, and we've managed to get through to it. So, I think this would be the biggest achievement a Scottish club has managed in Europe.
I think that's, if we were to win the competition, I think that's the statement that's going to provide the most kind of controversy and column inches. Is this the biggest achievement by a Scottish club ever? I don't think any of us can be impartial when answering that question, but I would suggest that it would be not least for the financial kind of gulf that there is obviously now between us and the larger football federations, but also purely based on the number of teams that we've had to play. I mean, remember us playing Alashkert sort of 6 months ago and how poor we were in that first tie. How much has happened between then and now? So that the number of games that you need to play has grown massively, and that to me makes an impact. I think the financial thing as well. The only thing I'd add to what you said there, Iain, the financial aspect is what also differentiates 2022 against 2008 for me. In 2008, Scotland and Scottish football was certainly no longer kind of a giant on the European footballing stage, but it's worse now. I think the 14 years that have passed have not been kind to us, us being Scottish football, not least because of what happened to Rangers. I think that's had an impact on our standing in the continental sphere. So the fact that these European competitions now, you're right, they're not designed for clubs like us to get this far. We're not supposed to get this far. You look at the efforts by UEFA to try and shut the door on clubs from countries like ours to even get into the Champions League, what with their what they want to call it, the Super League, and the sort of legacy points that certain bigger clubs will get as they want to keep them in the Champions League year on year on year. So we're not supposed to be here. I think the European kind of football political landscape has changed massively. The economic landscape has changed, and that to me is what makes this so much more special. That's before we even talk about what happened to Rangers and where we were 10 years ago. 10 years from administration, and look where we are now. So all of that stuff is, I think it'll take weeks and weeks and months probably to kind of unpick that and process it. Patrick, before we move on to some other news from the week, this is undeniably a massive achievement for Rangers and for Scottish football. How is it that Rangers have been so successful in Europe but have had an unsuccessful Premiership campaign with repeated slip-ups against teams like Ross County, Motherwell, and also against Celtic?
Well, I mean, I think like Occam's razor is probably the best way to put it. I think fundamentally we're playing in a competition in which the field has parity and teams will come at us, and we are, if not more often, I feel like in this run, have been the underdogs or the team who's willing to sit off, and the other team's going to come dominate us. And just the way we're built and constructed and how the parts have come together, especially under Van Bronckhorst management, that sort of suits us. Playing that sort of counterish, I mean, it helps when we have such really good, fantastic deep passers, whether that be Goldson or Davis or now Lundstrom, who's found this immaculate passing range out of nowhere. Also, I think it's inherently due to the psychological factor. These are bigger games. These are ones in which are on BT Sport. They're on DAZN, they're on Sky Italia, and everyone's watching them. You're playing big clubs, and subconsciously, whether you do it or not, you're going to play up. Or the big players will play up. Some will take qualms of that and be annoyed, and rightfully so. They should play every game on its merit, and a game against Motherwell away should be as gargantuan as Dortmund at home. But it just isn't, as much as we wish it was. I also think there is a sort of personality and mentality in the squad that we've done well in the last 3 years, especially the past two in which we've gone over our expectations and made it to the round of 32 and then to the round of 16. And there's this idea of progression. It didn't seem so. It didn't seem like we progressed this year, especially after the first two group games, Lyon at home and Sparta away. And that Sparta away game to me has been the worst European performance we've had since we've come back, per se. I mean, when I come back as in we've been in the group stages, I don't think we've had a worse performance outside of that. But yeah, I think it's quite simply just that mix of excitement from the players, us being able to play against teams who will consistently come out and attack us and leave and reciprocally leave space open and allow us to sort of go for that. And I think can't underplay the fact that the fans get into these games more so than any others. It's been absolutely bouncing. And I think Sir Alex Ferguson had a piece out today or an interview where he said that the desire and will from the fans and the players is what's really dragged them to the finals. And I can't argue with him on that point.
I think that is obviously a route that was one of the things that struck me actually watching the game today is how different. And this isn't a criticism of the crowd at Ibrox today. I mean, today's game, it is what it is. It's effectively a dead rubber with almost a B team being put out. But just how different I guess the atmosphere, the ambience, and the passion today compared to Thursday was, and you'd fully expect that. I do think, Patrick, what you're saying about players playing up when it's a European night, you're up against players like Jude Bellingham compared to when you're up against some of the talents that we have in Scotland. That does seem to awaken something in a lot of our squad. And I also wonder if some of our squad who don't come from the Scottish footballing tradition have gone, okay, well, we've won the top league in Scotland. Let's now focus on Europe instead. I don't particularly like thinking that as a fan, but that said, look where it's got us to. It's a hugely exciting time. Clearly, I don't think any of us are going to have a passing hour where we're not thinking about Thursday and we're not thinking ahead to Seville. It's almost made me forget about the fact that 3 days later we have a Scottish Cup final to win a competition that we have not won for a significant number of years, for too many years. which is also very, very exciting. And it just shows that there's so much stuff that can still come out of this season, which has, as I say, been comparatively disappointing on the league front. Gents, with the last sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes, I would like to turn to some contract news that broke yesterday. I don't think it's a coincidence that the contract extensions have come out after the semi-final. Whilst everyone's in a good mood, I suspect that's probably easier to get players to sign some contract extensions. Iain, we'll start with Alex Lowry, who has been tied down for a few more years. We've spoken about what he brings to the team and his potential already. How important is it to get that contract signed and have him tied down at Rangers for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, when you've got a young talent like that, you want to have them signed up and you want to have them tied down. So if he does develop the way that we hope he will, we'll get a couple of good years out of him, and then he's at a crossroads. Does he go, if he's good enough and he gets the offer, does he go somewhere else? Or do we, get another couple of years out of him, and then he moves on at that point? But we want to see him develop into what we hope he will become at Rangers. When you look at somebody like Billy Gilmore, he went off to Chelsea at a very young age. I felt, from his point of view, it might have been better to stay at Rangers and develop and become a better player at Rangers and then move somewhere. But I can understand why you would go to Chelsea, because for all sorts of reasons you probably don't turn that down. And the same probably is the case with Patterson. But at least we've got the option. So it would have been really disappointing if he hadn't signed a contract and he just went and we lost him and we didn't get to see what he could have become. So yeah, that's I think it's a good bit of business to get him tied down for another 2 or 3 years, or three years, I think it is, and then let's see how he pans out. I mean, you mentioned a couple of players earlier who just haven't fulfilled what we hoped they would, having broken through from the academy. I think he looks a bit like Patterson, who, as soon as he came into the team, I thought he's a better player than some of these other guys that we've sort of lauded in the past. And I think Lowry's the same. He looks like a player, and I think he will develop in it. I think he could become a mainstay of the first team in the next season or two. So the fact that we've got him there, we've got him tied down, I think is a really good bit of business.
Well, I certainly hope so. Patrick, do you agree with what Iain's sort of suggesting there, that the cases of Billy Gilmore and Nathan Patterson perhaps suggest that the grass isn't always greener down in England?
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's a case by case thing. I think Billy Gilmore, this season's been quite a step backwards, but he's done really well internationally. Under Lampard, he came in and played a significant role at Chelsea, and I don't think anyone can sort of pass any judgment, especially with Gilmore, considering where we were at the time and the financial package he would have been offered. The Cobham Academy has a fantastic track record of producing talent. You can just see now in England, in Italy, and in Germany, there's a literary of Chelsea graduates absolutely ripping up. So I think he probably has done better than he would have if he stayed at Rangers. I think you really need to consider where we were when he left. Patterson is, I have no slight on him going out to Everton. Obviously, it's not been great or worked out as well as he might have hoped, but it is also only 4 months in. He's been injured a bit. Everton have been embroiled in a relegation battle, which they wouldn't have expected to be in. If they weren't embroiled in that relegation battle, you would have expected as well that he would have been given a few more minutes, similar to how we've seen with Leon King. As soon as we're sort of out of this sort of title race per se, that's when you can blood these youngsters, just because the jeopardy might be too high to risk playing someone who, albeit is very talented evidently, but might not have the experience or to deal with the high pressure situation. I think with Alex Lowry, there was obviously talk of him going to Newcastle. I do think he's at the juncture in his career in which he doesn't have enough minutes to sort of move outside of Scotland. I think he still needs to firmly ground himself. This is coming from someone who's admittedly pretty terrible at football, but there is something about getting a good CV and getting minutes under your legs before moving, especially when you're at the juncture in which you're going to play professionally. Alex Lowry is too old and too talented to play B-team football going into the next season. So the idea of him moving to Newcastle and then probably having to pay 2 more years of under-21s, or the Premier League 2 as they call it, wouldn't have been a good idea. I'm also happy he's extended just on the fact that it probably guarantees that he'll have some minutes next season. I don't think him or his agent would have suggested that he signed without promises, contractual, maybe even monetary promises that he will get 1,000, 1,500, 20 games or whatever. But this is a sign that he believes in the coaching staff. And this is a sort of the A1 prospect. So if he believes in it, it's a firm indication to the rest of the talents moving through that they should stay at Rangers, because I think Gilmore and Patterson are good examples. But Dire Mabude, one who left us at 15, similar situation to Gilmore. I believe Man City paid a sort of cross-border fee, but that's in the low 100,000s. He's been one of the best Man City players at 17 in that under-23s Premier League campaign, in which they recently won. So I think the sort of setting the standards in which the Kings and the Lowrys stay in-house and develop can only be good for us as in a sort of a playing field, but as an institution as well.
I think that's absolutely right. I think you're. It's an encouraging step to see the young talent making that proactive choice to at least continue their development at this stage and see what that takes. I always suspect that the family has something to do with it as well. I think that Chelsea, the rumours are that Chelsea got in Billy Gilmore's family's ears, and one side of Billy Gilmore's family was Rangers, but the other was Celtic, and it was easy enough to sway in that way. I understand Alex Lowry comes from a real staunch Rangers family, and that probably took any element of choice out of the matter, and he was told to sign a new contract. But that's, again, all the better for us. I need to take a deep breath before I launch into the next segment. A new 1-year extension for Scott Arfield. Iain, is that deserved? Is that a good thing? Scott Arfield clearly hugely popular amongst the playing staff, very popular amongst fans as well. But diminishing minutes this season, I would argue, with the greatest of respect possible, a diminishing impact on the team. How do you respond to him getting another year?
I think it's a no-brainer, to be perfectly honest. I mean, he may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I think he's an honest, good player and a good impact player as well. And I think, we need guys like him in the squad. We need guys who know what it. He's been here for 3 seasons now, or possibly more. I'm not entirely sure now. I can't remember. But anyway, he's been there. He's done it. He's won the league. He's part of that squad that has been successful. I think give him another year for definite. I
mean, actually, before I sort of launch into my rant, Patrick, what do you reckon, Scott Arfield? I mean, he's certainly, putting it mildly, in the twilight of his career. We have in Alex Lowry an excellent prospect coming through in a very similar position. Do you see the value in giving him another year?
I don't love or hate the deal. I certainly agree to the fullest extent with Ian's point on the sort of standard setting of the institution on both the playing field and a personality-wise, albeit he hasn't been at Rangers all too long. I think it's 4 seasons and he hasn't won a litany of trophies, but he does seem to get what it means. And I think the fans truly appreciate that. So in a summer in which we'll likely have a few of our sort of old heads leaving, McGregor and Davis look likely. You might also see Goldson, who albeit might not have the years, but he's sort of been entrenched in what it is to be a Rangers player in the last few years. So that sort of maintaining the personality-wise in the dressing room is perhaps as important as what he'll offer us on the pitch next season. I don't think, and the fact that we've extended him for a year, he'll play the exact same role that he has this season. I think he will play less minutes. I hope so, from the fact that we do have a lot of interesting prospects in that sort of attacking midfield, sort of box-to-box range, and that there's a lot of good value this summer in that area to pick up as well. But I think it's fine. I think depending on the pay pack he's on, obviously, I don't expect that we've improved his terms. If anything, it'll probably be a matching or decreased salary. So that's fine. I think quite frugal from it, because albeit he might not be the perfect contributor in Europe, I think he still serves a purpose in Scotland. He has that sort of bite in which is sometimes needed to reciprocate against the sort of hard men of Scottish football in the sort of central midfields. I think you look like Alan Powers and that lot. And some people who have much better technical proficiency don't provide that. So all in all, I'm not mad at it. I think a lot of people will be happy about it as well.
So without meaning to diminish the goodwill and the good feeling around Rangers at the moment, I don't get it. I simply don't get it, right? Because he's contributed. Actually, in fairness to him, he has contributed more under Gio than he did under Gerrard at the start of the season, and I think he has looked a little bit refreshed since Gio came in. My issue with it is well, there's a few issues. I think that he never really had much pace anyway, but his pace is fallen away. I feel that he misses more good opportunities than he takes. Was it against Braga, his misses in Europe, which could have kind of put that tie to bed, were shocking, were criminal. But it's the fact that, I mean, Patrick, anyone who doesn't follow Patrick on Twitter and kind of get the insight of the scouting and analysis of some maybe more alternative leagues that we could be shopping in, I always get the sense that there are so many targets that we could spend that money and take a bit of a gamble on, which could pay off. We know that Scott Arfield's product is on a downward slope just because of where he is in his career. So I feel that money could, if we wanted to invest in alternative targets in that position, the money could have been spent on that. I feel that we've just signed this new deal for Alex Lowry, and I feel that if Scott Arfield is getting any minutes next season that Alex Lowry could have got, that's a travesty, because we should be using that position to develop Lowry as much as possible. I don't see much difference in those two players at this point. But I think for me, the thing that I really don't get is that it sounds like Connor Goldson's not signing a contract because we will not come up to the value that he thinks he should be getting week in, week out, right? So let's say Rangers are offering a certain number, Goldson wants a little bit more than that. The money that we're about to give Scott Arfield, could that not have been put on the Connor Goldson deal to convince him to stay, even for another year or two seasons? They're not in the same position. I get that. It's never as simple as just the number, and there must be all sorts of other factors. But it seems strange to me that Scott Arfield, who's played Premier League, who's one of the most experienced and senior players in that dressing room, is not playing for buttons. He's not playing for peanuts. So while I agree that he's not earning more money from this deal, he's still going to be earning a significant amount. Could that money not have been put towards a new deal for Connor Goldson? And that's where I really don't see the value in this. I really don't. But we've got Iain saying it's a no-brainer. We've got Patrick saying it's not a bad idea. So I'm happy to be outvoted. I'm very, very keen to hear what all the listeners think on this and see if anyone agrees with me. I do have a bit of an issue with Scott Arfield in that I don't see what everyone else sees. So seeing that news yesterday, right, so we get the Europa League semi-final, we then get Alex Lowry signing a new contract, and I was absolutely flying. And I've seen that tweet come through, like, new 1-year extension for Scott Arfield, and he's sitting there in the old manager's office wearing a suit. I was in a mood. Look, before I've ranted enough, I will wrap it up there. I'd say a massive thanks, of course, to Patrick and Iain, and sorry for making you sit through that wee sort of rant at the end there, but I still don't get it. But thank you to Patrick and Iain for giving up their Sunday evening to come and talk Rangers with me. It's been a hell of a week, and it's been a pleasure getting to discuss it with these two gentlemen. A massive thanks as well to everyone who's joined us tonight live on the YouTube stream. Thank you for getting involved, and thanks as always to Frankie for marshalling and controlling that. The Gersnet podcast will, of course, be back throughout the week. We'll try and squeeze out a preview show ahead of the Ross County game on Wednesday. But we will, of course, be back with the main show next Sunday. That's at 9:30 p.m, as always, on the Gersnet YouTube channel. Just keep an eye on the Gersnet Twitter feed for all of the latest details, and head over to the website, as I say, at gersnet.co.uk. Thanks again for joining us. Please do give us a like and a subscribe. Make sure you never miss a thing. And until next week, goodbye for now.